Hi, everyone. I've come to tell you a little bit about myself today and the way I work and how I have come to use the tools I use and work in the way that I work. So, like most people, for the longest time, I used lots of positive, lifting um, thoughts and mindset things and think yourself into the life you want and all these kind of tools. And what I found was that I was able to use them to make changes, but it felt really slow and it felt really tough. And when I started to think about working with other people, because I had gone so far down the line for myself, I realized that I needed to have a way to combat the but I can't, resistance. And so that was when I started to introduce EFT into my own practice. Now, this is not at the point where I'm working with anyone else. I started to bring it in for myself. And as I did that, really just as a tool to meet that, but I can't resistance, I went further and further down the rabbit hole with it. I couldn't find enough information about it for myself. And so what I did was I just took classes in it and more classes and more classes, coming at it from loads of different angles, the way loads of different people used it. And it got to the point where I'd taken so many classes, I had accidentally become a master practitioner in it without ever having intended to use it. And so then, in order to really settle myself into that, I did all the things where I worked with loads of people for free and I applied it. And what I discovered for myself was that where other people move away from the negative, from the reasons why you can't, I found myself really leaning towards that. Like it got to the point where that was kind of the only thing that I wanted to talk about was like, tell me the reasons why you can. I have likened it in the past to you being in a hot air balloon and you're in a field. I was at this hot air balloon thing when I was about 6, and it clearly has impacted me. So you're in this big field, and there are all these hot air balloons, and they're all your peers, right? And they're all doing this, I'm going to make my life amazing. And you're creating all this positive energy, and that's going into your balloon, right? That's what's fueling this balloon. And you look around and you see all your peers and they're taking off and it's so amazing. And then people say, right, imagine yourself in the air. Like that's how you have to get yourself in the air. So you imagine yourself in the air and you're like, oh, I really feel it. I really feel it. And then you open your eyes and you're still on the ground. And then you look down and realize that you have safety ropes that are attaching you to the ground. And it does not matter how much positive energy you put into that balloon. It does not matter how much you think yourself into the air. It's not going to happen, right? You have to remove those safety ropes. You have to remove that resistance. And for the longest time, I saw that those safety ropes as representing your fears. And now I realize that it's really not your fear, it's your resistance, right? It's very, very different. I think we can see our fears, we can't see our resistance, right? And so what started to happen was I became fascinated with the fact that I could see other people's resistance. I could see where the safety ropes were and I could help them to remove them, right? And so I realized that I was the person who wanted to hear people talk about the negative stuff, talk about the reasons why they couldn't, right? Where other people were saying, no, bring me positive vibes only, right? And so that became really cool. But I think it's also important to notice that I have a kind of no nonsense, fiery side, right? And that's where I really leaned into my passion for shadow, right? This is where I started to, for myself, look at the work of, for example, Carolyn Elliott, who has a fantastic book called Existential Kink. I have always been fascinated with Jung and reading Carl Jung books since I was ridiculously young. I don't know why that happened, but it did. The presence of archetypes, the idea of shadow. I did my dissertation on Jungian archetypes and how they show up in life and impact us. I went to art school and studied interior design. There was no reason why I should have done a dissertation on that, but that was where my passion lay. And so that's what I did, and that was okay. And so that really comes into my work too, because it's very important that you don't just see working with me as another way to enable yourself to stay where you are. I am the person who you can come to say all the really negative stuff, right? I am and that's not just I hate my life or my family or this person was really mean to me. It's also just I'm stuck. I don't know. I don't get it. I hate this. I want it to be easier, right? But you can't get stuck there. And so this other element of my fascination with shadow has been the perfect combination of these two things, right? Because I am not going to let you stay there. And actually doing the work, you won't stay there anyway, right? If you do the work to release the stuff, they will release. But then having this ability to see where you are living in patterns, where you are suppressing parts of you that for whatever reason have been rejected, right? When you marry this shadow, this understanding that it's okay to be all of you, and it's okay to also not know who you are because you're carrying so much baggage that really isn't you, that's covering who you are. And once you put that down, you will see who you are, right? When you tie these two things together and you start to work in a way where it's really just about releasing, and understanding that what is under there will be clarity, it's golden. Now, this is also called the goddess experiment. And for me, I was living in a place where I had been pulling myself up with all this positive stuff for the longest time. And it worked wonders for me. It was great. But I could also acknowledge that it was doing all the work of trying to reprogram my mind that let me realize actually how low my self-worth was. And I would never have identified as a person who had low self-worth. It was only in finally listening to my partner tell me that he could see that I had patterns, that I was doing things that a person with higher self-worth wouldn't do, right? Like the way I was looking after myself, or the way I prioritized myself, or the way I was prepared to spend money on myself, or the way I was prepared to do so many things, right? I had cleared so much that I could finally hear that. And so what I started to ask myself was, what if I could raise my self-worth? Because I knew that would make a difference. I know that if you can raise your self-worth, everything else comes with it, right? But what I had realized was that raising my self-worth a bit wasn't going to get me anywhere. It really wasn't. I needed something really dramatic. And so I said to myself, what if I could raise my self-worth to that of a goddess? How would that impact my life? And for the past year and a half, as I'm recording this, it has changed everything in ways I can't even quantify. I spent the first part imagining how it would be to see the world through the eyes of a goddess, what she would think about me, what she would say, how she would expect me to treat myself. And I have gone to understanding that I am that goddess. You are that goddess. We always have been. This is something I've understood since I was a little girl. Like, my religion never really impacted the way I saw the world. For me, it was just ritual that my family was involved in, and we went along, and it was really a community-based thing. I never listened to anything that was actually being said as part of ceremonies or anything like that. Just never ever clicked with me. But my dad, who's non-religious, really introduced me to a lot of philosophy and a lot of big thinking. And I have always understood this notion that we are of one poured into a smaller vessel, right? If God is a jug of water, lots of people say the ocean, but to me that has its own, like the ocean has its own thing. So let's just leave that. If God is a jug of water and there are currently however many billion glasses on Earth to represent all the humans, then we are all just a bit of water poured from that jug. And when we die, we will return to the jug. And then we will maybe be poured out again in a slightly different configuration, right? And so that changes things, right? When you think not only does God or goddess love me, but I am, and you are, and we are, it changes everything, right? And this isn't something that you need to believe in or accept or feel any positive feelings around to help you as you work with me, because that isn't actually necessarily the work that I do. The work that I do is in finding the resistance to the things that you want, finding the parts of you that aren't you and letting them go and seeing what lies under that. But there is certainly a self-worth piece in there. And what will happen is, as you naturally let go of everyone else's thoughts about you, you will find your own thoughts about yourself and realize that they are not negative, right? At our core, we don't actually dislike ourselves generally. And that's the goal, right? Let go of what is not you and find out who you are. And as I've done that, I find my beliefs in there. And as you do that, you're going to find completely different beliefs, right? You might find that the religion you were raised in is who you are, and you do love it, and you want to go back to it. You might find that you don't care about any of that. You might believe that, that actually you thought your whole life you wanted to be a teacher, and now you realize you want to be a gymnast. You might find that you love your life exactly as it is. Who knows? It's all an adventure. It's a big journey, right? It's all fun. And that's how I got to where I am. And as far as the experiment goes, I'm really only 18 months in. So who knows where I'll end up. But that's where I am for now. And I can't wait to see where you go.